Hello. In this video, I will be going through some parts of the Topic 9 test review. There were a few students that requested a video where I go through the test review. So I wanted to make sure that I do that for you guys just to prepare you for the test, which is tomorrow, Friday, April 19th. All right, starting with number one. It says use the graphs to find the solutions. So they give us an equation. I did see some students try to use the X method for that. It says use the graph, so you don't have to factor that. By giving the equation, that's just completely useless information. All we have to do is look at the graph and look at the answers, which is the x-intercepts. So what is that point and what is that point? So the x-intercepts are x equals -4 and x equals -2. Those are my two answers. Those are the two x-intercepts. I have also seen some students write it as -4, 0, -2, 0. Either of these will be correct. I do not mind either of them. The one thing that I would say that is wrong, some students have been writing the answer as a point. So they'll write -4, -2. That's wrong. That is not how we write answers. Those are not x-intercepts. That is a point on a graph. That tells me go left 4, down 2. If I go left 4, down 2, I arrive there, and there is no x-intercept at -4, -2. Scrolling down. Number 2, find the solutions of the quadratic equations by graphing. Since it says graphing, they want me to use Desmos. Now, could I use the X method? Yes, but I'm going to make it easy for myself. If I can graph, I'm going to graph. I'm going to put this like that. All right, I have to type in the equation. X squared minus 2x minus 35. You could put it with the 0 or without the 0. The x-intercept should be the same regardless. So I have an x-intercept at -5 and an x-intercept at 7. So those are my two answers. X equals -5 and x equals 7. And just to show, I'm going to put the equal 0 just to show that I'll still have the same answers. The difference is that when you put the equal 0, it'll make the graph look like two straight lines, but you still get the same answers. Okay, now I'm going to go back here. That was number 2, solving by graphing. Number 3, lots of questions on number 3. This is actually one of the first things we learned in topic 9. This says that two equations, or these two pieces are being multiplied to equal 0. That means that the first piece, the first parenthesis could be the 0, or the second one could be the 0. We don't know which one, so we set them both equal to 0 and solve. I'm going to solve the one on the right first because it's the easiest. All I have to do is get x by itself, so I'm going to move the -7 by adding 7. First answer is x equals 7. On the left one, the first step is the same because there's a -7, so we can add 7. There were a lot of students that either stopped here, they circled that. Some students asked questions here. They're like, how do I get rid of the 6? I'm not sure why there's any confusion. We've been solving equations like this all year. The 6 is being multiplied, so we are going to divide. And That leaves our answer as 7 over 6. Or if you divide it, obviously you don't get a decimal, which is okay. Now, I've said this before, you can check almost every answer on the test. There's, I think, 2 or 3 that you cannot check on Desmos. So how do I check this one on Desmos? Same way I would do any other one. I'm going to plug in the equation. So parenthesis 6x minus 7 parenthesis. I'm going to make it look exactly the same. X minus 7. And then remember, equal 0 without the 0 doesn't matter. I'll put the equal 0. And then these are my 2 answers. So I know I got the 7. And then this should be that fraction. So it was 1.167. Remember, you can type in decimals here and tell them change it to a decimal. That's coming up a little different. Probably because I rounded. It's probably a longer decimal. But 7/6 is about 1.167. Or let's see if I work backwards. What's 7 divided by 6? You see 1.67. So these decimals are pretty close. It's just rounding. All right. Moving on to the next one. These say solve by factoring. Remember, it will say solve by factoring. Any other method will get a 0. So make sure you show me the X method. We always multiply A times C. So the number there times that number. The number here is a 1. 1 times 8 is 8. And the middle always goes on bottom. This was a hard set of numbers for students because when you think about what multiplies to 8, there's only 2 numbers that come to mind, 4 and 2. But there's also 8 times 1. Everyone always forgets about the number times 1. Since A is 1, I can take a shortcut, which means I'm going to go straight into factor form. X goes there, X goes there, positive 8, positive 1. And now, just like we did in the previous equation, take each parenthesis and set it equal to 0. And then we're going to solve. Both of these are adding, so we're going to subtract. So those are the 2 answers. X equals -8, X equals -1. Just to keep stressing using Desmos, now I'm going to type in this equation. Make sure my answers match. X squared plus 9x plus 8. -1, which I did get, and -8, which I did get. So I checked. This is all good. Time to move on to the next one. Number 5, rewrite the expressions without a perfect square factor in the radical. That just means simplify. And that doesn't mean type this into your calculator and get a decimal. Simplify means they want us to break it down. So what are 2 numbers that multiply to 320? In my mind, since it ends in 0, I always take out the 10 right away. 32 times 10. Neither of those is a perfect square or a pair, so I got to keep breaking it up. 2 numbers that multiply to 32. 16 times 2. 2 numbers that multiply to 10. 5 and 2. 16 is a perfect square. The square root of 16 is 4. I have a pair of 2's. I'm going to take out a 2. 5 is not a perfect square. Doesn't match. So I'm going to multiply the 2 and the 4 back together. That gets me 8. And then with a radical of 5. Remember, different methods, but you should get the same answer. For number 5, I am going to do the one on the right as well, just because this one has very two things that multiply to 27, 9 times 3. X to the 5th means x times x times x times x times x, 5 x's. 9 is a perfect square. I have a pair of x's, so I take out an x. I have another pair of x's, so I take out another x. And there's nothing else I can take out. 3 and x are not perfect squares and they do not match, so I put those back together. And then in the front, I multiply those. 3 times x is 3x squared. Number 6 says rewrite the expressions where x is positive without a perfect square factor in the radical. Again, that just means simplify. So I'm multiplying two radicals. First thing I'm going to do is combine them under one radical. And then from here, we're not actually going to multiply them, we're going to break them up. What are two numbers that multiply to 6? 3 times 2. X to the 3rd is x times x times x. 2 is already simplified. I don't have to separate the 2 to anything. And then it has 3 more x's attached. Alright, I have a pair of 2's. So I'm going to take out a 2. Take out a 2. It's not letting me write. Take out an x. Take out another x. And then take out another x. So the only thing left under the radical was the 3. And then in the front, 2 times x times x times x, so it's 2x cubed to the 3rd power. Scrolling down, number 7. Solve the quadratic equations by using square roots. So this is one of the ones where there's only one x. That means solve it like a regular equation. So you guys actually really like these. These are the easiest, I think, to most students. So I'm going to start by adding 9. That's the opposite of subtracting. 9x squared equals 81. 9 is being multiplied, so I'm going to get rid of it by dividing. And then how do I get rid of a square? The exponent 2, we take the square root. And we get x equals 3. But don't forget the plus or minus. 3 times 3 is 9. But negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9. So 2 answers. And then this one, just because you're going to get a decimal, I'll go through this one as well. Decimals are okay. 61 minus 1 is 60. Divide by 6 both sides. So here, when you take the square root of both sides, 10 is not a perfect square. So I have to type that into my calculator. And I think I got 3.3. I might be off a little bit there. You can check my Answer King Google Classroom for the official number. This is an equation, so I can actually check it on Desmos. So I'm going to do that. 9x squared minus 9. For this one, I do have to type in the whole thing because that's not a 0, so I have to put the equals 72. Okay, -3, +3, which is what we got, plus or minus 3. That's for the one on the left. Let's see. I don't want to do that. And I'm not going to check the second one just because it's not in this row at the same time. Okay, moving down to number 8. It says find the value of c that makes the expressions a perfect square trinomial. Lots of questions on this. To find c, there's a formula, b over 2 squared. Remember, we did this, I want to say, about 20 times in class. So what's b? B is the middle number, which is -6. -6 divided by 2 is -3. -3 squared is 9. So the answer is 9. On my answer key, I plugged it back in, so I wrote my answer like this. Doesn't matter though. Number 9. What number should be placed in the boxes? Well, let's analyze this. From this step to this step, what changed? So they added these. That's pretty obvious. Over here, they changed the trinomial into the factor form. How do you factor a trinomial? You use the x method. So they want you to use the x method to find what number goes in the box. 49 goes on top. 14 goes on bottom. What are the two numbers that multiply to 49 but add to 14? 7 times 7. So that means 7 goes in the box. I'll do the one on the right as well since there were many questions on this. So again, they just changed the factored form, the trinomial into factored form. So they did the x method, 121, -22. Both of these are going to be negative because that's how I multiply to a positive on top, but add to a negative on the bottom. And the numbers are 11. 11 times 11 is 121. So that means that the answer is -11. Scrolling down, rewrite the quadratic functions in vertex form by completing the square. There were a lot of students that were thrown off by this because of these words. Completing the square. That's what the method is called for changing it from standard form to vertex form. So don't let the completing the square do anything or confuse you in any way. So if you look at your notes, there are 3 problems where you just see this. Those are the 3 problems that you should look at. Rewrite the quadratic functions in vertex form. Completing the square is just a method. Remember, my words were, this is the only reason you're going to complete the square, so you can do this problem from blue. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, if you remember, we normally change the f of x to a y just to avoid any confusion in the problem. And then we start by moving c. So that +2, I'm going to subtract y minus 2. And then we're going to complete the square, so we're going to leave a blank on both sides. How do you get the number that goes in the blank? That's where you use the formula, b over 2 squared. b is -4. It's the middle, the number in front of the x. -4 squared. -4 over 2 squared. -4 divided by 2 is -2. -2 squared is +4. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. This is great because now I can factor this trinomial. Now it's a factorable trinomial, so I'm going to use the x method. 4 on top, -4 on bottom. What are the two numbers that multiply to +4 and add to -4? -2. And remember, I also told you a shortcut. It's always the number inside the parentheses. So if you look at the thing I just circled inside the parentheses, -2. So x minus 2 times x minus 2, but that's just x minus 2 squared. On this side, we combine those. -2 plus 4 is +2. All right, almost done. I'm starting to see vertex form. The only thing left is this 2 shouldn't be there. The opposite of adding is subtracting, so I'm going to move it to the other side. Y equals x minus 2 squared minus 2. You cannot combine those twos. One is shielded by the parentheses, so you just leave it on the outside. Okay, and last thing is I'm just going to change the f of x back to 1 because we changed it, so we have to change it back. So that's the vertex form. Now, you can also, I didn't say this in class, but you can also use your graphing calculator to check these. How do I do that? I'm going to type in both equations. So, and just the after, so x squared, not the f of x, minus 4x plus 2. Because these are the same equation, just in different forms, they should overlap. So that was the original, and then this is the new one. So you see how the green one, like if I turn it off, that's the blue one, and that's the green one. You see how they're the same? That means you did it correctly. That means that these two equations are the same. Just this one's in vertex form, this one's in standard form. Super helpful to check these type of problems. Okay, moving on. Find the discriminant in number 11, and then identify how many solutions the equation has. The discriminant is the formula b squared minus 4ac. So you just have to take a, b, and c and plug it in. b is -6, so -6 squared minus 4. A is -9, and c is 3. We type that whole thing into our calculator. Make sure you don't miss the parentheses. And when you do that, your calculator should give you 144 if you did it correctly. And then remember, there's 3 rules. If you get a positive discriminant, that means 2 solutions. If you get a 0, that means 1 solution. And if you get a negative, that means no solution. So this is a positive discriminant, so that means there's 2 answers. If I graph the equation, it's going to touch the x-axis twice. All right, continuing. Daphne solved the following equation using the quadratic formula, but made an error. Identify at which step the error was made. So I'm going to start by making sure she plugged in all the numbers correctly. So B, I don't know, I started with B. A is +1, B is -2, -9, C is 8. The formula is negative B, so B is -9, she plugged that in correctly. -9, right there, it's good. Minus 4A, A, she put in a 1. C, 8 is C, good. And then in the bottom, 2A, 2 times 1. So step 1 is good, she plugged everything in correctly. Step 2, she multiplied those two. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that positive 9 is good. She plugged this into the calculator, what's under the radical, and that does equal 49. And then she multiplied the bottom, 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is 2. She put a 3. So the mistake was in step 2. She made a calculation mistake. 2 times 1 is not 3. 2 times 1 is 2. 13 is using the quadratic formula, which it will be provided on the test. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Formulas are pretty straightforward. You take all the letters out and put all of the numbers in. So I'm going to label the numbers right here. This is A, this is B, this is C. B goes away, negative 6 goes in. B goes away again, negative 6 goes in. Minus 4, A, which is 3, C, which is negative 18. And then in the denominator, 2 times A, which is 3. From here, we do 3 steps all at once. We're going to multiply those, type this into our calculator. Just what's under the radical, not with the radical. X equals negative times negative is a positive, so now I have a positive 6 there. Type this whole thing into your calculator, parentheses and on, and you should get 252 over 2 times 3 is 6. Next step, now we're going to type this number in with the radical. So that gives me x equals 6 plus or minus 15.87. We always round to two numbers after the decimal. Okay, now there's nothing else I can do until I separate these. So I'm going to make two separate answers, one with a plus, one with a minus. X equals 6 plus 15.87 over 6. 6 plus, sorry, this one's a minus. Minus 15.87 over 6. You type these in as two separate steps into your calculator. You do the top, hit enter or equals, and then divide by 6. If you do it correctly, you get 3.645. That's my first answer. And then the second answer, again, you subtract the top, hit enter, and then divide, and you get negative 1.645. This is an equation, so I can check it with Desmos. All of this work is completely useless if I got the wrong answer, so I'm going to check it. 3x squared minus 6x minus 18. Again, with the 0, without the 0, doesn't matter. Okay, you can't see my answers on the screen, but we did get 3.645, which is pretty close to this. Rounding doesn't matter. And negative 1.645. Again, rounding doesn't matter. So we got these answers. So I checked it, and I'm ready to go on to the next one. Last one, solving systems of equations by graphing. When you solve a system of equations, you're just trying to see where do these lines cross each other. So graphing means Desmos. So this one's pretty easy. You just type in both equations into Desmos. For these, I do recommend that you type in the whole equation, but it doesn't matter. You can also not type in the y. Y equals x squared plus 3x minus 2. And then the second equation, y equals 2x. Desmos does a really nice job because it points out the points for you. So that's where they cross, and then that's where they cross. So those are my two answers. That is where the red and black line touch. This is where the red and black line touch. So on here, I'm going to write -2, -4, and 1, 2. Some students might say that there's three answers. They might say, what about the x-intercepts? Those are only when you graph one line. When you graph the system two, you're looking for where the two lines cross. Hopefully this helped. You guys know that my reviews look exactly like the test, so hopefully that helps prepare you fully. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me before your test in class. I'm also at tutoring today, Thursday, after school. Anything I can do to help you be successful, let me know.